hot cup of chai and a plate of hot spicy samosas will tickle the sphincter and send sparks of inspiration to the brain. We do it today in honor of Cassim Saloojee. That is the introduction to Ismail Mahomed's article. It would have been lovely if I did have a cup of chai with a with nice hot samosas, but let's just make it a homely discussion if that's it, because I know that you refer very, very, can I say, it's satirically on the stoop scenario. So before we get into that, Ismail, assalamu alaikum and welcome to the program.
Walaikum salam, Najma, to you and to your listeners. And thank you for having me part of your program with such auspicious guests that you have following me as well, to talk about Lenasia and the dreams and the visions that we had in a suburb to which we were all dumped in by the nationalist government. They were hoping that we would decay, but we did not. We defied the horrors of apartheid and we were able to make our own careers and contribute to the development of that suburb in significant ways. And I think what is particularly interesting about Lenasia in the time when I grew up there was just the dynamism of a community that was never going to give up at all, that were going to defy the horrors of apartheid and make a success of their lives, their careers, and the futures of the children that would follow them.
Right. So, when you speak about our next guest, and you've mentioned him with such honor, he is extremely privileged to have been taught by you.
Absolutely. At the Lenasia High School, I started my career as a mathematics teacher and science teacher. Whilst I enjoyed being in the classroom, there were many other attractions that I had outside of the classroom. I believed that the arts was an incredibly dynamic way through which we could humanize our society. And I gravitated, after 5 years of teaching, full-time into the arts sector with absolutely no regrets of building a career for the last 40 or more years as a writer, director, and to be able to hold some of the most wonderful positions in the cultural sector in South Africa, as the National Arts Festival in Grahamstown, Makanda, and then also as the CEO of the Market Theatre Foundation, and presently as director of the Centre for Creative Arts at the University of KwaZulu-Natal.
Well, that's just exactly what I was saying about how people have just, grown, and you followed your career path and still contributing in a larger way, I suppose, now that it's easier for South Africans to have access to this. But I know that during the time when you were, when you just chose this career path, it was a means of expressing our solidarity or disquiet at the apartheid government. A lot of your productions focused around that, and to use the arts was a brilliant way to actually reach or conscientize people that way.
Absolutely. I think, we saw culture and artistic expression as a dynamic way of protest. Bullets can kill people, but bullets can never kill poetry. Poetry lasts. Same way as bullets will never be able to kill down music. The theater or whatever, it can never kill down books. You can burn books, but the words still linger on because somebody has memorized those words and they will rewrite those words over and over again. So I've always found the arts to be a compassionate and an incredibly powerful way to recall memory, to be able to critique our present time, but also just to be able to imagine the kind of better futures that we want for ourselves.
Right. So having said that, tell us how the idea of establishing the Market Theatre was born on a stoop in Lenasia.
Absolutely. And
I think we should just, sorry to interrupt, but I think stoop, we just need to translate that because it's our language, that, if I may call it that. Yeah.
As others would say in the English language, sitting on the stoop was a regular way of life for all of us at those particular times before we lived in kind of gated communities or in homes that were surrounded by high walls and electric fences and so forth. Neighbors would sit on a stoop. You bring your friends and you socialize on your stoop. And the extract that you read earlier about samosas, we know for a fact that apartheid didn't just fall because people protested. Apartheid fell because the nationalist government was so vulnerable and so stupid that one could bribe them with a plate of samosas. They loved it. And we
Uh-huh.
know grandparents took it to the receiver of revenue. They took it to uh, the licensing officer when they wanted licenses and so forth. Because as much as the party tried to deny people access and opportunity, a plate of samosas could open many, many doors. So the reference that I made in that particular article that I wrote about was, satirical about the way in which samosas was a catalyst to bring Indian people and white people around a coffee table or around in a veranda, and to be able to dialogue and engage with each other and to be able to discover their common humanity. But to get
Right.
back to the market, it was Cassim Saloojee whose name has essentially been written out of the history in the cultural sector. And that was an issue that I wanted to bring up in that particular article because the market theatre where it's presently located is what is called what was the old fruit and vegetable market in Newtown before it became a cultural space. When that place was shut down, the city of Joburg put out a tender to adapt the place for different kind of use. And it was Manny Manham, who is one of South Africa's legendary theatre makers, celebrated worldwide, and not only for his creativity, but also for his commitment to social justice, was in a
Mm.
conversation with the late Cassim Saloojee in Lenasia on a stoop, chatting to each other. And it is there where the idea of the marketeer was conceived. And, Manny and Barney Simon, John Carney, Vanessa Cook, and a range of other people played an incredible role in ensuring that it became one of South Africa's most important cultural institutions. And Cassim Saloojee was invited to serve on its very first board. But Cassim Saloojee had a bigger and a deeper interest in the arts before that. He was involved with what was called Dorke House in Elop Street, which
Right.
was the political home of black artists. Even Athol Fugard had staged his work there, even though he was not African, but we know that Athol Fugard's heart and soul and his writings was essentially for and about black people. Uh,
Mm.
Cassim Saloojee, we know him as the kind of social activist. We know him for his dynamism in the role that he played in Lenasia, particularly at the Just Center, at
Mm-hmm.
Just the organization. But we seem to have forgotten his role as a cultural activist, one who believed in the power of culture to build and to transform societies.
Right now, when one talks about it now, it sounds like it just happened. It's history, and people struggled a bit, and then eventually we got the market theatre. What happened in the market theatre was also something very, very interesting in terms of the time that it was established in, and also just the fact that Indians at the time were now looking at theatre and poetry and plays and all types of stage art, if I can call it that. How difficult was that to overcome?
Yeah, well, there was legislation in South Africa that prevented blacks and whites to be in the same auditorium or blacks and whites to be on the same stage unless the presenting management was able to obtain a special permit for that, which was quite dehumanizing and degrading. But
Mm.
the Market Theatre opened in 1976, 2 days after the start of the historic Soweto uprising, and
Uh-huh.
it opened its doors as a non-racial theatre in defiance of apartheid in many, many ways, simply because it found a major loophole in the sense that the market theatre where it was located was already a trading space where different races had already been integrated coming to the
Correct.
marketplace, and it did that. But at the door, at the top of the door of the market theatre, at the entrance, it had a sign that said, uh, you know, uh, right to entry is reserved. So in some
Mm.
ways, that was a way of creating a kind of club space that would allow different races to come together and mingle. Of course, the security police did monitor, did watch, did harass artists that performed there, and did take down which is the registration numbers, the car plates of people that came to the market there as well. But,
Ah,
the world's attention at that particular time was so much on South Africa due to the Soweto uprising, and a theatre that opened 2 days after the opening of the Soweto uprising in a completely non-racial space was going to get world support. The theatres in South Africa only became non-racial in 1978. And that is after enormous protests by other people who worked in the sector, who kept badgering the nationalist government to open all theatres to all races. But that was also
okay.
because of the cultural boycott, the international cultural boycott, where a number of professional authors internationally refused to give South African racist theatres the rights to perform their work. So, in many, many ways, the nationalist government succumbed through to pressure to open all theatres to all race groups. The other factor to take into consideration is that television was introduced in 1976. So, white attendances at theatres somehow dropped post 1976. It was not becoming economically viable for them to continue to hold those spaces as whites only spaces, and hence they were forced to open up all theatres to all race groups in South Africa.
Right. After this break, we talk about what led to the closing of the Doki House, followed by Cassim Saloojee taking the job as director at Jiswa in Lenasia.
Goals feeling out of reach? Yasin Badat Financial Advisory is here to turn your aspirations into achievements. Our dedicated team, armed with a history of success, is ready to guide you through the complex nature of financial and investment planning. Whether you're a seasoned investor or new to the game, our personalized solutions cater to your unique goals and risk appetite. Trust in our commitment to transparency, integrity, and excellence. Ready to unlock a world of financial freedom? Partner with us today. Call Yasin Badat Financial Advisory at +27333462071 or visit www.yasinbadat.com. Yasin Badat Financial Advisory, guiding you to financial success.
They say breakfast is the most important meal of the day, yet many children go to school hungry because of poverty. Penny Appeal South Africa's Breakfast Club aims to get a warm, hearty meal to underprivileged children so they can spend their day prospering in their schoolwork. Help feed a needy learner for only 5 Rand a day, or 150 Rand a month. Or visit our website www.pennyappeal.org.za or call 031 1100 573 to find out how you can donate. Penny Appeal South Africa. Small change, big difference. When the perfect blend of stylish decor, exquisite halal cuisine, and warm hospitality come together, it could only mean Al Bayt Lodge, your true home away from home. Al Bayt is the ideal heaven for families, business people, and tourists with its 4-star family rooms and other luxurious facilities. Conveniently situated close to Port Elizabeth Airport, the beach, and other amenities, your stay will be truly unforgettable, as you'll be taking home lasting memories of the warm hospitality, the serenity and tranquility that Al Bayt has to offer. For reservations, call 041 583 6415 or visit www.albaytlodge.co.za.
Abu Huraira narrated that he heard the Prophet Muhammad, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, say, "In black seed there is a healing for every disease except death." Experience the health benefits of this ancient blessed seed by using the Tib Black Seed range. Black seed assists the body to boost immunity, regulate blood sugar levels, reduce inflammation, and act as a potent antioxidant. Experience a holistic approach to health by introducing the Tib Black Seed range into your routine. Available in capsules, pure cold-pressed oil, and a vapor rub. Trust Tib Health Sciences for quality black seed products. For more information, visit blackseed.co.za. Available at leading pharmacies.
Hey, Gulam.
Yeah?
Did I return your lawnmower last month?
No, bye, you didn't.
Oh, no. Now what'll I do? I wanted to borrow it again, man.
With Randry Jewelers, you won't have to borrow or lend because the prices are so well trimmed on all gold and diamond jewelry. Alternatively, we could remake your old jewelry into a brilliant new design. Visit Randry Jewelers at 151 Stevens Lamini Road, Musgrave, Durban. Randry Jewelers, the family name you can trust.
Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salam Media.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. We speak to our very special guest. It's, of course, Ismail Mahomed, who is the director for the Center for Creative Arts at the University of KZN. Before the break, we spoke about Doke House and changing our focus onto Cassim Saloojee and, then establishing the Jiswa Center as it is today.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned earlier, Cassim Saloojee had been involved with Doke House as an administrator. Doke House itself had been struggling with a lot of resistance from the state to shut it down and so forth. And of course, many of the black artists that performed there then went into exile. Hugh Masekela, Miriam Makeba, and a whole range of other people. Cassim Saloojee himself had gone off to study in the US, and of course, when he got back, he lived in what was considered a white suburb before settling down in Lenasia and so forth. And he was responsible for the Act Stop movement. That was the organization that resisted the eviction of people from what was considered white areas in terms of the Group Areas Act. And after Act Stop, he got integrally involved as the director of the Jiswa Center in Seikabos Street in Lenasia, directing that institution to have a completely integrated approach to social development. So it was not just about charity and handouts and feed poor people and leave them in their state of poverty, but he was a visionary. He understood that in order to take people out of their circumstances, there needed to be a commitment to engaging politically with the system and challenging that system, which in its first instance was problematic. But he also had a deep commitment to young people. One of the most dynamic programs that took place at the Jiswa Center with his permission and consent was the Time of the Writer program, I think, which took place on Tuesday evenings and Thursday evenings. But as a writer, director at that particular time myself, I cannot recall a single time where, under the leadership of Cassim Saloojee, he charged any artist who wanted to perform a play at the Jiswa Center. And I recall some outstanding productions that took place by various playwrights in that center, including Mutal Naidu, Mashi Maponia, Don Matera, and even some of my own work that was staged initially in the Jiswa Center before it went off to tour to other places.
Right, and just to elaborate on that point, there were no theaters at the time available in Lenasia, so Jis Hall was the hub of plays and concerts.
Absolutely. There was no theatre available in Lenasia at that particular time, as there still isn't. But there were various community halls, the Gandhi Hall, the Partida Hall, which were incredibly large venues and worked incredibly well for music shows. But, theatre is an intimate form of expression where the very closeness of relationship between an audience and those on stage is so vitally important. So the size of the Jiswa Hall was just superb as a venue. The acoustics were brilliant. It had a lovely small stage, which was portable, and one could move that around to create the kind of configuration that you wanted. It had a superb foyer, but most important was that it had a place of relevance in the lives of Lenasia people. And that made every performance that was staged in that venue so much more special.
What was your most memorable presentation at the Jiswa Hall?
I think one of the plays that literally influenced my own writing was a play by a playwright from the Vaal area, Gamakulu Deniso, who staged a one-person play resisting apartheid. It was called Kuyanduga, the Sphinx. That's what it's when you uh, uh, translate it. And on that single stage, he manipulated the music, he manipulated the lighting, and he performed. And it was a spectacle to be able to watch that particular play. And so much so that he influenced my own ability to write solo theatre. And in the 80s, I wrote mainly for solo theatre because it was also economical, it was portable. You could go to festivals, arts festivals, just you and your performer, and you could
Right.
be an absolute hit. So that did influence a lot of my writing. The other play, which I think most Malaysians will recall, was my play Mama They Say I'm Mad, which dealt with the issues of disability, which had 3 wonderful young performers in it, and we had just over 100 performances of that play during Lenasia, after Lenasia touring other parts of the town, other towns, and also festivals. And after the 100th performance, we then decided, it's time to close the show down now. We've done longer.
What's your view on, just to close this topic for now, on theatre and the arts in Lenasia currently?
Well, I'm glad that when I attended Lens 70, the book event, I was inspired just to see how many writers there are in the town. I recall at the time it was a lonely space. Ahmed Aesop was one of our most prolific writers, and one
Correct.
could point out to other writers who wrote in the fiction genre. We had wonderful journalists, Amin Aklwaya, Yusuf Nazir. We have Fakir, who still continues to write. Uh, Wahid Kamruddin. There were a number of writers working. Jubi Mayat comes to mind as well. There were a number of people working as journalists, but writing fiction or writing in other genres, the novel, the playwright, or the poem, was a very rare occurrence. But again, it was a world of contrasts in the sense that, writing poetry in English may have been a rare event in Lenasia. But we mustn't forget that there were many people who wrote poetry as ghazals or as nazms or as other forms of religious rhyme and expression. It was culturally woven to religion in somewhat. But now when I looked around at Lens 70, the event was there that I was there. There were writers, there were playwrights, there were poets, there were novelists, there were fiction writers, there were people who write for radio. The genre has exploded, and I think it's wonderful that Ismail Wadi, who was the brain and the organizer behind that particular event, could just bring everyone into the room on that particular day to realize that writing does not have to be a lonely or a solitary exercise. Yes, we take time off and we go into a quiet spaces when we write, but we're inspired by each other's writing. We're inspired by the energy that each other brings. And sometimes as a collective of writers, it's just necessary to be able to share the kind of knowledge, the skills, the opportunities, the access that we have to writing programs, to writing workshops, to writing funding opportunities, and so forth. So
Right.
that's off to Ismail Wadi and the people who were behind that particular initiative.
Right. After this break, we're going to, and I'm quoting your second article now. It goes without saying that the health services are inextricably tied to the politics of this country. The late Dr Abu Asvat. That's our discussion after this break.
Investment and advisory services from an award-winning firm? Look no further than the Belmont Mayer Group, your gateway to unparalleled investment and wealth management. At Belmont Mayer, we believe in the art of wealth creation, a meticulous process fueled by our unwavering commitment to excellence. With a focus on providing elite alternative investments and quality advice, we also pride ourselves on maximizing value for our esteemed investors as seen through our consistent outperformance. Your financial success is our top priority. Join us at Belmont Mayer and experience the difference firsthand. Ready to embark on a journey of greatness? Contact us today. Reach out to the Belmont Mayer Group on 078 786-1698. Call or WhatsApp or email us at info@belmontmayor.com. Elevate your financial future with Belmont Mayor, where every detail matters.
For too many communities across Africa and the world, access to clean water remains a dream. At Africa Muslims Agency, we dig deep, reaching into the heart of the earth to fill the cups of those in need. Sponsor a water well for 16,500 Rand, or a borehole in Afghanistan for 55,000 Rand, or Africa for 65,000 Rand, or any amount. With water comes food, health, education, and growth. An ongoing reward with Africa Muslims Agency.
Shimmer, sparkle, captivate. Nothing less than a masterpiece. Droplets of gold inspires precious design. Platinum bursts with intricate freshness, and every pure diamond becomes more than just a girl's best friend. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, where timeless dreams become a reality. Come to us. We tailor-make designer gold, platinum, and diamond jewelry. Trade in or remodel your old gold. Clad yourself with classy name-branded watches. We offer insurance valuation and free zakat calculation. Visit us at 534 Ridge Road, Overport, or call 031-208-9142. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, manufacturers of fine gold and diamond jewelry.
The chaos and destruction in the Gaza Strip is beyond comprehension. Virtually everyone is displaced, hungry, and in urgent need of life-saving humanitarian support. The Al-Imdad Foundation has been working tirelessly to address the health, nutrition, and water needs of the population. Our hospital, water deliveries, and hot meal programs are made possible with your support. Your donation, big or small, is a lifeline for those in dire need. Help Gaza survive. Donate online at alimdad.com or call 0861 786 243 for more information.
Kids these days are smart, and when you're competing for their attention against their smartphones, you need to make smart choices, like using Sunfoil triple refined pure sunflower oil in every meal you make. It's naturally cholesterol-free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether you're cooking, frying, or baking, you get the great tasting results that'll get their attention faster than the latest app. And if that doesn't work, change the Wi-Fi password. Sunfoil. Now we're cooking.
When you give water, you're reaching out to drought-affected areas, bringing them to life. Fresh water to drink, to clean, and to grow. That's the power of water. Donate now to Islamic Relief.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
34 minutes past 11. You're with Najma Khota on the Land 70 podcast series. Our guest for this hour is Ismail Mahomed, director at the Center for Creative Arts at the UKZN University of KZN. I beg your pardon.
KwaZulu-Natal, yes.
So yes. The miracle
University of
worker.
KwaZulu-Natal.
That's right. I think we should have clarified that, because we take for granted everyone knows what UKZN stands for, right? Yes. Thanks for that. All right. The other article that I want to talk about now is you've titled "The Miracle Worker of McDonald's Farm." Tell us. Sorry. What was his story? What was Dr. Abu Asvat Hurley's story?
Well, from time to time, I write these articles on my Facebook page, trying to track down the kind of histories that we seem to forget. And, the miracle worker of McDonald's is, for me, a kind of satirical title. We all know that Cyril Ramaphosa, when he kind of entered the economic empowerment market, bought the McDonald's franchise. And, it was part of that rose-colored glasses time that we all lived in our country post-1994, where we thought everything would go right and we would live in a completely different kind of society. Yes, we do live in a very different kind of society, but we do know that lots and lots has gone wrong, and particularly with around the corruption during state capture years and so forth. And the miracle of McDonald's really deals with Abu Asvat, who, when he was dismissed from the Coronation Hospital at which he worked because of his political stand, opened up his surgery in a part of Soweto which is called McDonald's Farm, a neglected and forgotten shanty town. It was there where he worked with the late wonderful Albertina Sisulu, who was a nurse. And, you know, they came from two very different political ideologies. We know she came from a Congress movement. We know he came from a very strong Black consciousness movement. But yet the two of them had one passion, and that is to bring medical care and medical health to the people of McDonald's Farm in Soweto. And I wrote that particular article at a time when we were in the COVID pandemic. And we know exactly what happened with a lot of the medical support that was provided, you know, to combat COVID-19 in South Africa, with tenders that have been milked by entrepreneurs, and medical services did not really reach out to where it needed to be. And part of that, we also know that the health minister at the time was implicated and dismissed. And I asked the questions around, just what would Abu Asvat, who was so passionate about medical care and service to the poorest of our people, do if he had lived at that particular time during the COVID-19 pandemic and been witness to what was happening with the state and corruption during that particular COVID-19 pandemic years that we lived through.
Right. Indeed. And, I think in one of my discussions, we spoke about, the inequalities, the spatial inequalities that were caused by the Group Areas Act and accessibility to basic human rights like your transport, healthcare, especially healthcare. So Dr. Asvat made it possible to reach, not possible, accessible to the poorest of the poor. Going into Soweto wasn't so easy in those days, Ismail.
Absolutely not. I mean, you were harassed by police, you were stopped, there were barriers that obstructed your entry. But, Abu Asvat didn't just operate from his surgery. Abu Asvat would also take medical care into other areas, kind of a caravan of love in some ways, where he would pack medical supplies, in his vehicle and travel and go to people that really needed him. And this is why I refer to that particular article as the kind of medical worker of in some way, just the kind of superb work he did. But I also do know that he was involved in the sports sector in Lenasia as well. So he was kind of well-rounded, balanced individual.
Yes,
and my kind of first real major interaction with him was, I had booked the small hall at the Lenasia's town hall, the civic center. There were two venues, the large one and the small one, and I was using the small one for a production. And he came to me and he spoke to me about a particular meeting that he wanted to convene, which was quite urgent, but very diplomatic, very gentle, very caring, taking into cognizance that the work that we did as arts people was incredibly important as well. He didn't just bulldoze and push his way around and so forth. And for that, I respected him enormously, and I still continue to respect his incredible legacy. And of course, I'm always remain saddened that his legacy has been almost erased by our government.
Right. And, you mentioned that, his dismissal from the Coronationville Hospital and today the naming of it. I mean, the significance of having the hospital named after him. Give us your view on that.
Yeah, well, he was dismissed essentially because there was a medical sales pitch that was taking place at the hospital, and the medical representative with the management of that hospital, separated medical staff into blacks and whites, and there was a separate presentation for white medics and a separate presentation for black medics. And of course, Abu Asvat had objected to that. And, we know that at that particular time when you resisted with objections and so forth, you often were subjected to disciplinary actions and so forth, which he was, and then of course he was dismissed and so forth. But that didn't deter him from continuing to work in the independent space. And I asked the question, I said, when we begin to re-look at the way post-1994, we've tried to reclaim our histories, there hasn't been equity with the way the government has addressed the celebration and the honoring of the legacies of our people in this country. It's often the case of he who holds power holds the pen. And we've seen that very much with our government, that when they began to rename spaces and places and streets, they named them specifically from people that came out of one particular movement. And we've not seen people from other parts of the movement that have been named. Now, the name Rahima Musa, of course, we all know is a celebrated name, one of the leaders of the Women's March and so forth. But her name lines an entire street in Newtown. And yes, it deserves to be honored, it deserves to be there, and it deserves to be remembered. But, if you wanted to really think of Hurley Abu Aswat's work in the medical sector, and particularly his resistance at that hospital, it would have been the most sensible thing to have named that hospital in honor of him, and it was not. But that does not mean that his legacy is going to be completely erased. I think there's a wonderful amount of work that happens in particularly in the Black consciousness movement that continues to celebrate, honor, and annually remember his name. And I think it's important that the nations too remember and honor him as a champion of healthcare in South Africa.
Indeed, and having lived and worked in Lenasia and conscientized, whether it was in the cricket or whether it was in the health sector, socially, a community activist, really giving back in every aspect of his passion, if you like. You can see where his passions were. And one finds that, we have the Abu Bakr Asvat Drive now named, which is from Nirvana Drive in Lenasia into the Soweto, over the Soweto Bridge. It's quite aptly named, actually, because it's that bridge he crossed every day to go and serve the people of Soweto.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's incredibly significant that that particular bridge that connects Lenasia and Soweto is named after him, given his pioneering role in building that bridge between our two suburbs.
Correct. And in closing here, I'm quoting again from your article, and it reads here, the story of Abu Asvat is as tragic as it is heroic and inspirational. It is the story of a man who unreservedly committed himself to the struggle of his people for freedom, who steadfastly defied the oppressor, who devoted all his energies, talents, and professional skills to the service of the poor, but who was apparently murdered by either the very poor he worked so hard for or by the liberation struggle gone mad. We never know, but we remember him posthumously today and really salute the people that lived in Lenasia when it was just, like we've been saying over the weeks, a dust bowl that's now developed into a suburb that's rich with a lot of diversity and a lot to give. But at the same time, Ismail, we cannot ignore the fact that there is still a struggle in terms of development. Integration is happening, but development on the whole is rather disappointing. Would you agree?
Completely. I think whilst, I remember Lenasia at the time when I lived there. I've been away from Lenasia now, I think close to about over 25 or so years. And I've really come down on a few times, but, don't stay for more longer than a weekend or so if I do come down. But my memories of Lenasia, particularly in the 80s and the 70s, when I grew up there, was that we we were an integrated community in terms of religion and culture. Of course, racially, it was an Indian suburb, but we were a passionate society that often crossed barriers in many, many significant ways. And I think one of the challenges that we have, not only in Lenasia, but I think in a lot of suburbs in South Africa, is because of the high crime rate that prevails in our country. We build walls around our homes, and it's not just for walls that we build to keep us safe and so forth, but it's also walls that we keep building and that separate us from each other. And I am sometimes very disappointed when I do come to Lenasia and I look around in the malls and I look around in restaurants and so forth, and I yearn for that integrated space that we once had.
Indeed.
That it isn't there, and I get concerned that a younger generation is not experiencing that same levels of integration that we enjoyed and grew up with in Lenasia.
Right.
I also think, unfortunately, all South Africans have become so much more materialistic, and we're so busy with trying to survive every single day that we don't often have the time to just sit and do what we did. And come back to the issue of to sit on the stoop and to have a conversation with the other, and to just be able to discover our common humanity. We don't see that so much. Of course, our lives change significantly, and we build other kinds of networks. We communicate with each other on social media, and we communicate through other forms of digital technology. But that does not replace the kind of human contact in the dynamic
Absolutely.
way we enjoyed it
Right.
in the.
Well, let's just say we can end this conversation by saying that you and I just had our digital stoop conversation without the samosa and the tea. But thank you very much for the time.
Thank you very much, Najma, and thank you for the work that you do. You've been a champion since I've known you. From a previous career opportunity where I worked with you in terms of recognizing your potential as a leader in South Africa. And I'm glad that you continue to champion the work that you do so very, very passionately, and for you to keep the memories of Lenasia, its people, its legends alive in the way that you do. And congratulations to everyone working on Lens 70.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Super.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Right after the break, we speak to Dr. Mohammed Musaji.